ISIS. You do it with a coalition. The Saudis, the Jordanians, the Turks, the Egyptians, the Israelis, and other allies in that region. You put together a very focused, disciplined, highly leveraged, intelligent machine. And when I talk about intelligence, I'm talking about intelligence gathering machine.
Right.
And then you use your military special operators to go in and eliminate ISIS.
All right, does Rick Perry have the right, I guess, recipe for victory? Let's ask Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz, former commander of U.S. Army Special Forces and Green Beret, Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army Reserves, author of Warrior Diplomat, a Green Beret's Battles from Washington to Afghanistan. Hello, sir.
Hey, good afternoon.
Well, thanks for coming on, and appreciate talking to you, and appreciate your years of brave service, certainly. Let me ask you, what do you think of Rick Perry's plan, if you will, on defeating ISIS? Because certainly what we're doing now certainly doesn't seem to be working.
Well, I think the governor had many of the right parts, but there are some important distinctions that I think it's important for your viewers to understand. Right now, if you listen to the governor, it sounded a lot like our current strategy, but where our current strategy is so flawed is in its execution. Number one, there's important differences between trainers and advisors. Right now, our special forces out working with the Iraqi army, the Kurds and others are allowed to train, but they can't go with them out into the fight. So it's kind of like, to use a football analogy, the coaches of a team, they're allowed to go to practice, but they can't go to the game. And that has resulted in a number of things. Our airstrikes are much less effective. You can't get the intelligence on the ground that we need. You can't really bolster the backbone of many of these Iraqi and other commanders. And then most importantly, you can't oversee our equipment and really know what's going on the ground. And that's where you've seen literally hundreds of Humvees and armored vehicles and others get lost over to ISIS, which they're then turning around and using against us.
Yeah, it's very, very frustrating, certainly. You talk about in the book, and you've served in the mountains of Afghanistan, and then you were a policy advisor to Dick Cheney.
Right.
So you live both ends of this, and that's the beauty of the book as well, because it shows you have that unique perspective. So talk about Afghanistan, because that seems to get lost, and what we hear from the president is, the war's over. He ended that war, but did he end it?
But look, we cannot just self-declare the end of a war. The wars aren't over just because we left. We've seen that in Iraq, and unfortunately, I think we're about to see that in Afghanistan. Right now, the administration's policy is to go to 0 troops by the end of next year, exactly what we did in Iraq. And I just came back from Kabul. The Afghans are extremely nervous. You're starting to see the currency start to slip. Capital is leaving. They don't know if America is going to be with them over the long term. And so the people on the ground, the government, and most importantly, our enemies are working against us. Obviously, our enemies are, but everyone else that we need working with us are hedging for the post-American Afghanistan and the American withdrawal. It's extremely unhelpful.
Why do we tell people years in advance when we're leaving, what we're going to do? Same is true with ISIS. Why do we telegraph our strategy?
I was on the ground in Afghanistan in uniform as a Special Forces officer when the president announced in his 2009 West Point speech that we have a surge, but then that we're going to withdraw the surge within 18 months. And an officer standing next to me said, can you imagine Franklin Delano Roosevelt announcing D-Day, but then telling the Germans, the French, and everyone else that we're out in 18 months, and everyone else in Europe that would work with us, you're on your own? It's really egregious. I can't explain the thinking behind it, but I can tell you from being on the ground when it happened, we immediately saw a loss of support from the elders all the way up to the government, because they're making life and death decisions on a daily basis. And one elder told me, until you're prepared to commit your grandchildren to stand shoulder to shoulder with my grandchildren, this won't work. We need to know that you're going to be with us for the long run.
And very briefly, we have a minute left.
Sure.
I don't know if you could do it justice. The political correctness issue and the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
especially in Afghanistan, with respect to elders and not to offend people and taking down viewing towers or lookout towers and not shooting, you know, waiting to shoot if a car is all these kinds of rules. Don't they tie the hands of our men and women?
Well, look, in a counterinsurgency environment where you're trying to win over the support of the populace, avoiding civilian casualties is incredibly important, but not at all costs, and certainly not at the cost of our men and women in uniform. My view is that that cannot be micromanaged at a high level, that you have to imbue that,
Right.
but then put it in the hands of our junior officers.
On the
Right
ground.
now,
Yeah, on the
right
ground.
now in Iraq, our men and women are being micromanaged all the way back to the White House, and it's
Colonel,
hurting our effectiveness.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Warrior Diplomat is the book. Thanks for coming on, sir. More of the show straight ahead.